Hi, I'm Beck from Beck Baker Instructional Design. Drag and drop interactions are a brilliant way to get learners thinking. They help people make connections, sort through information and actively work through problems rather than simply reading or clicking on static content. In Storyline you can use text, images, icons to build drag and drops. There's a lot of creative freedom. But what about accessibility? Well, unfortunately, standard drag and drops aren't accessible for learners who rely on a keyboard. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to build a familiar drag and drop and add an extra layer, full keyboard access. I'm going to go through step by step, but if at any point you get what I'm talking about, you can just skip forward in the video. I hope you really enjoy this. Let's dive in. Okay, so the first thing I have done is I have a blank slide and I have 3 rectangles that represent our drag boxes, 3 for our drop boxes and 3 for our information boxes. So nice and straightforward, nothing complicated about it. My drag boxes are 400 by 100 pixels and the drop boxes are just 10 pixels bigger either way for that because I have a border that is 5 pixels. So it just means that my drag box is going to fit neatly into my drop box. Okay, so make sure when you've created anything in your timeline that you label things. So I have my information boxes, drop boxes and drag boxes. The reason we do that is it makes our world so much easier, especially creating triggers. And we're going to have quite a few triggers for what we need to do here. So make sure that you label everything and also make sure that you save regularly. So you can click Control S on your keyboard or you can just click on the icon at the top or you can go File Save. The reason for this is that the auto backup recovery is it saves every 10 minutes and it is amazing what you can do in 9.5 minutes. And if you happen to crash during that time, it's very, very disheartening. I'm sure we've all done it. So just make sure that you save regularly. So the first thing we're going to look at is creating our standard drag and drop. Now you may be thinking, wait a minute, Beck, I thought you were going to create something that was accessible and drag and drop isn't accessible. But for a good majority of users, they will still be using features like a mouse or dragging and dropping on a tablet, and that suits them. And if we suddenly take that away from them, people can get very frustrated because they're expecting an interaction to happen and then it doesn't. So we still have to create our normal drag and drop, but we then add an extra layer so that you can also use a keyboard for accessibility. Okay, so for our first drag box, we need to create different states. So just select the item, go to States and select Edit States. Then select on the New State button and we want a selected state and just click Add. This will pop up at the bottom and we need to change the colour. So if you go up to the top where it says Format, you can then go to Shape Fill and we're going to make this an orange just so you can see the difference. And then we can select a new one and we want a disabled state. And we're going to save that as the same orange colour. Now the reason I want a disabled state is so that the user cannot click on it later on the correct or incorrect pages. Now something that I have used and I've seen lots of people use is a transparent rectangle over objects so that they can't select them on another slide. The problem with this is a keyboard can still select it by using the tab. And I'll demonstrate that in a minute just so that you see why it's a good habit to create disabled states or have other states. It may be triggers that are telling you they can't select on something rather than using that rectangle. So I'll demonstrate that in a minute. The next state we need to create is our correct. So drop correct. And we're going to change this to something that we can tell is different. So I'm going to choose a green colour and then we are going to create a drop incorrect. Now, if you were setting it up as I'm going to set this up, we would want the drop correct and drop incorrect to also be the same as the selected colour, because we don't want to tell them before they've done all of it that they're getting it right or wrong. We want them to do all of them, hit a select button, and then it tells them. But when we are testing, we really want that colour to be different so that we can tell. Now, if you have a colour deficiency and red and green isn't for you, then pick whatever colours are suitable, or you could always use a different texture, just so you can tell what is correct and what is incorrect for yourself. So this is just your personal preference and testing. So I am going to select done. And then I am going to duplicate that across these. Now I could go individually onto each of them and repeat the same process, or happily I can go to the Home tab, click on Format Painter, and then select my next drag, and that will pop and populate all of those. And then I can do exactly the same Format Painter for my drag 3. And that will also populate those. I could have double clicked on the Format Painter and then you can do multiple items, but I tend to then accidentally go clicking on other boxes that I didn't mean to. So I find it easier to do one at a time, and I am happy with that. And then we are going to click that Save button. Now I'm just going to demonstrate what I meant about that rectangle. So what a lot of people do to make sure that you can't select on something later on the same slide or on a different slide is they create a rectangle over the top. So insert rectangle. It doesn't matter what the colour is, because you are going to go to Format, Shape Fill, and drag this all the way so it's 100%. And you would also make it so that there was no outline. I'm keeping that just so that we can see it happen. So this is a way of being able to get it that someone can't click with a mouse, but I will demonstrate what happens with a keyboard, because it is sadly not the same. So now I've got that rectangle over the top, I cannot click on anything. But if I'm just going to click on the slide. If I click the tab button, I can now tab each of those, and I can select them and it'll change the colour, and that is exactly what we don't want. So these rectangles are absolutely brilliant if you know people are only using a mouse or they're using a touch screen, but not great for anything else. So I've got in the habit that when I don't want them to be able to click, then I've got a disabled state, or it may be I've completely changed, like got new things on the correct and incorrect, but that's my best way of doing it, by having a disabled state. So let's create our drag and drop feature now. So we want to select drag, we want to go over to our triggers pane, select the create a new trigger, and we want to change the state of our drag 1 when it's dropped onto our Dropbox 1, and change it to the green colour, because we know that this is correct. This is how we want it. So we want to change state of drag 1 to drop correct. It also has it here. I always go down to the bottom, but it's got it in both places. And we want it, instead of user clicks, we want it when they go to the bottom. Let me just make this so you can see it. When object is dropped on. And this will automatically put the object as drag 1, because that's what we had selected, and we want our target to be drop 1. Okay, so I'll just go through that again. We want to change the state of our drag 1, this one, to our drop correct, which was green for me. When the user drops, drag 1 onto drop 1. And that's all it should do to start off with. So let's preview that. So I click that. When I let it go on here, it has changed to our green. Nice and straightforward. And we now need to create the incorrect versions. You could go and create a completely new one every time. I like to just copy and paste. So we've got our copy here and our paste. So you could use Control C, Control V.
And then I always find it easier. You can select these and start changing them, but I find it a lot easier to just go back into the trigger wizard. So we can either click on here on the edit the selected trigger, or just double click and that brings it up again. So change state of drag 1 to drop incorrect. When the user drops, drag 1 on drop 2 or 3. So any of those ones, it will change it. So this time, when we preview it, we click that onto drop 1, it changes red, just replay it, click it onto drag 3. So now we've created everything for number 1, and we just need to do the same for our drag 2 and 3. So we'll select the first one, copy and paste it, open up that trigger wizard, and this time we're going to go drag 2 to drop correct. When user drops, drag 2 onto drop 2. And that's now created that one. And then either you can go into the incorrect here or just duplicate this one. It depends how you prefer to work. So we're changing quite a few things, so you might find it easier to do it just on the one you're on. But that's now saying drag 2 is incorrect if it goes to 3 and 1. And then we will do our final drag 3. So this time, drag 3 set to drop correct when user drags drag 3 onto drop 3. Okay. And then we're just going to, I'll do it the other way so you can see again, copy and paste that, open it up, and this is our drag 3, drop incorrect, and when it is on 1 and 2. Okay, so we've now got, it's good to check it in your objects to make sure that it looks like you've got the same sort of items. So we can see here we've got 1, 1, 1, and then 1, 1, 2 and 3. Then we've got 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1 and 3, and 3, 3, 3, and 3, 3, and 2 and 1. So it just allows you to just quickly have a look, but the easiest way is to click onto the view, preview, and we can just drag different things into different places. Can replay that, get them all correct, wrong, and just check each of the different configurations of that to make sure everything is correct. It's so much easier to do things step by step rather than creating absolutely everything, then trying to test it, and then you don't know whether it was one thing that's creating the error or another thing. Okay, and we're going to save it. So now that we've created our standard drag and drop, the next thing we need to do is make our accessible version. And how we're going to do that is by using animations. So we want it that when we click on our drag item and then click on one of the drop items, it will move to whichever item we've made. So select your drag and go to animation and go to add motion path. And we just want a simple line. And it will give you the green dot, which is the starting place, which you should not need to move, so just leave that alone, and a red dot for your ending place. And you can see an outline of the shape, whatever it happens to be. And you want to make sure it turns into a hand when you're moving this over the dot, and then put it in the place that you want it. Now, with more complicated slides, it's usually easier to find what this center point is, and then you can put it in here in the X and Y coordinates. So we know, then you have it exactly. And it's remembering that it's the center point, not the left or the top, that it's working with. It's working with the center of whatever your object is. So that might be more helpful, but luckily this is just a nice straightforward one, and it can snap to the boxes, so that's helpful for us. Okay, the duration of 2 seconds is a bit long, so I always change it. I'm going to have 0.75, and this is probably the most important bit. We need to rename it, and don't make it complicated. We just want drag 1 to drop 1. And then we've got a few different options in our path options. So at the moment I have it set to unlocked, and this is probably, for me, the most useful. Especially if you create a template and then you want to slightly move things around. If you have it unlocked, if I move this rectangle over here, it will then move the interaction over here. If I have it set to locked and I move the rectangle over there, it will keep the interaction here. So if I go to click and drag it on here, it will go boink and move here and change there. So I only want it on unlocked. And then for me, I don't want any easing. So easing is that it slows when it's fading out, and it speeds up a little bit as it's going in, it creates a smoother interaction depending on what animation you're creating, but I don't want any, so I'm going to click none. And that's as simple as that. So I've created my motion path, I've changed the duration, I've given it a name, most important thing. And for me, I've just got rid of the easing, but you can choose what you want. And then you'll notice that it pops up in our triggers, it automatically creates a move item, but I don't want this. And it's a lot easier to delete this and create what we want later. So I'm just going to select it and hit the bin, and yes, you can just press the delete key as well. That does the same thing. So now I want to create the animation so it goes to drop 2 and drop 3 as well. So I'm just going to go through that. So when it's still selected, click on Add Motion Path, just a basic line again, and it creates a new one. Make sure you select the right one, and we drag it to our Dropbox 2. Change your duration, and we want this to be drop 1 to, no, other way around, drag 1 to drop 2. And I'm going to get rid of that easing. And then finally, again, just click Add Motion Path, click on our lines, grab the right one and drag it to where you want it. Duration down, drag 1 to drop 3. Hopefully you spell better than I do, and click none. So now we've created those 3 different places, and I'm just going to go to the trigger panel and delete these ones as well. I don't want those. Now I'm going to do the same for my drag 2 and drag 3. I am going to do this in real time. I think it makes more sense for everybody to make sure that you are following what I'm doing, but you can fast forward the video if you choose. So I'm now selecting my drag 2, Add Motion Path, line, and this time we are dragging it over to our Dropbox 1. Change the duration, drag 2 to drop 1. Whoops, not stop 1. No, I can't spell, can I? Drop 1. Oh dear, it's been a long day. Add motion path, move this one here. And finally, move to Dropbox 3. And we're just going to go and delete all of those from triggers, and then finally onto number 3. So we want 3 to 1. Yep. Drag 3 to, I can't spell, drop 1. I hope it's not just me that struggles with typing things in, especially when you're filming. So drag 3 to drop 2. And finally, we are doing drag 3 to drag 3. And just deleting those from the panel. So we're just left with what we had before. If you haven't saved, then make sure you save. And the next bit is we are going to make it that they actually move, because at the moment we have the movement, but we don't have any way for it to actually go anywhere. So we're going to select our drag one and create a new trigger. And just move this over here. So this time we want to do move. So we want to move, drag one, and do the first one. It always seems to default at 1 to 2. Don't know why, but I want the first one. So drag 1 to 1. And this is where it changes a little bit, and I will do it and then explain it a bit more. So what we want is when the user clicks on drop one, if our object's drag one equals selected. So I'll just explain that again. We want to move drag one along this path when the user clicks this box if this one has already been selected. So I'll click OK on there and then demonstrate it working. So it'll have just popped up at the bottom. So I need to select my drag one, so that changes to our orange state, and click on drop one, and that will move it. If I didn't have it selected, then nothing's going to happen, or if I selected a different box, at the moment nothing is happening. And then we want it so that it moves to our other boxes. So I'm just going to duplicate that again, copy, paste, and go to the edit selection. And this time we want our drag one to go drop 1 to 2. When the user clicks drop 2, when drag one is selected. And then again, copy that, paste it, and this time we want to drag 1 to 3. When the user clicks drop 3, if drag one is selected. So this is just doing each of those interactions. And if we just go to our preview, we can then just take it in turns. So that one works, just replay. That one works, replay. That one works. Some people I know have had these so that it takes longer to get over to that one and work out the timing a little bit better. But I don't think it matters too much. But if you think one looks like it's going too quick, you might want to change those. But now we just need to repeat that for drag 2 and drag 3. So the easiest way, as I keep saying a lot of the time, is just to select one, copy and paste it, and then open up that trigger wizard. So this time we're wanting to move drag 2 to drop 1, 2 and 3. So change it to drag 2, and we want it drag 2 to 1. When the user clicks drop 1, when drag 2 is selected. So we've got 2 going 2 to 1. When we click drop 1, if this one is selected. And then we're just going to copy and paste that and make our other states. So drag 2 is going 2 to 2 when the user clicks Dropbox 2, when the state of drag 2 is selected, and then paste that again, and we want 2 to 3 when the user clicks drop 3 when drag 2 is selected, and we'll just check that works. So I do think testing at each small stage just makes you know that where there are any areas. Whoops, didn't need to do that. So I've selected drag 1, going to drop 1, replay, drag 2, going to drop 2. and drag 2, going to drop 3. We just know that each of those interactions are now working, so if we get an error, it's something that we then have done later on. So finally, we're going to do exactly the same thing for our drag 3. So we'll just select that first. I always think it's easier to select the first one, go to our trigger wizard, and this time we're moving drag 3, 3 to 1. When the user clicks drop 1, if the state of drag 3 is selected. Copy and paste that one. So drag 3, 3 to 2, when we select drop box 2, when drag 3 is selected. And finally, we have 3 to 3, when the user clicks box number 3, when drag 3 is selected. And we'll just quickly test that. So 3 going to 1, 3 going to 2, and 3 going to 3. Now don't start trying to do all of them at once because we still haven't selected our correct. So for example, if I do this and then click that one, it will move both of those to there. And that's because we haven't said to change the colours so it's staying as selected. So just something that if this happens and you're thinking, why is that moving? It's because we haven't done the next stage yet. So be patient and we will get through it all. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is kind of what we did here where we were changing the states of things, but related to when they've dropped on a box. So we're just going to create a new trigger and we're going to say change the state of drag 1 to drop correct when the user clicks drop 1, drop box 1, if drag 1 is selected. So it's kind of saying the same thing as moving. So before we were saying move this when we click drop box 1 if drag 1 selected, but this time we want to say whether it's correct or incorrect for each of those. So this time change state drag 1 to drop correct when the user clicks drop 1 if drag 1 is selected. And that will just pop up at the bottom. And then we want to do this for the incorrect states as well. But we're doing these individually. So I'll show you what I mean. So this time drop incorrect when the user clicks drop 1. Now, when we were doing the drag and drop normal features, it was if this or that was selected, but believe me, you want to make sure you just do this individually. If you don't, it comes into a whole world of mess. So drag 1 to drop incorrect when the user clicks drop 2. If drag 1 is selected, click OK, and then copy and paste that one. You don't need to see it, it'll just have the one that you had before. And we want drag 1 to drop incorrect when the user clicks drop 3 and drag 1 is selected. So that should have on each of these corrected that state, and we can just go and preview it as always to make sure all of that is doing what we want it to do. So this time we are clicking drag 1 to drop 1, that should turn it to green. Replay, we want drag 1 to drop 2, that's turned it to red. Replay, drag 1 to drop 3, and that's turned it red. So now everything is working nicely for that one. And again, it's just repeating that this time. So I'm just going to go back up to my drop 1 and just copy and paste that again. So this time, drag 2 is drop correct when user clicks drop 2. I find it easier to always do the correct one first and then do the incorrect ones. But you may always want to do it 1, 2 and 3, whichever is your preference. And I should have mentioned as well, I've done it nicely where it's going 1 to 1 as the correct answer, but you may want it that drag 1 goes to drop 2 as the correct answer. So you would just change these to be suited for whatever you want. Don't feel you've got to start moving stuff around. All you need to do is change your drop correct and incorrect in this one and obviously in the normal drag and drop states. Okay, so 2 is correct when drop 2 clicks and it's drag 2 selected. And then again, just duplicate that one. And this time we want drop incorrect. When the user clicks drop 1, that's correct. And then copy and paste that again. And we just need to change that to drop 3. So that is the other incorrect one. Quickly test that. And so drag 1 is incorrect there. 2 to 2 is correct. And 2 to 3 is incorrect. And then finally we just need to do our drag 3. I'm just going to do a quick save because we've done a bit of changes. So I'm just going to go again onto that first one and paste that. This time we want drag 3 to drop correct when we click on the final box. And drag 3 selected. So 3, 3 and 3, that's all good. And then we're going to just duplicate that and we want it to be incorrect when the user clicks drop 1. And copy and paste that and change this to drop 2. So now when we preview that, we just test those individually again. So drag 3 to drop 1 should be incorrect. Drag 3 to drop 2, incorrect, and drag 3 to drop 3, correct. And actually now we could do all the other ones as well, because they're all changing state. And you might want to just do a few versions of those to make sure everything is happy. And we can replay those. Okay. So that is all of our different interactions happening. So next we will go on to creating a select button and go into our correct and incorrect layers. So the final thing I want to do is create a submit button to take us to our correct and incorrect layers. So my correct layer purely has correct and my incorrect has incorrect. I've not done anything complicated. This is just so that we can see it working. So I'm just going to insert a rectangle. You'll have, however you like creating your buttons, you should already have that. But I'm just going to do a simple rectangle. I'm going to give it a nice colour. Let me just change my text, centre it, get rid of the border. So nothing complicated there, it's just a submit button. And you can create your down states and that sort of thing. But for this, I'm not going to bother. I'm just making it straightforward. So what we want is that when we select our submit button, if the answers are all correct, it goes to the correct page. If one of them is wrong, it will go to the incorrect page. And obviously there'll always be 2 wrong, at least. So it's really simple. We just go to our triggers again, and we want to say show layer correct when user clicks rectangle 1. We must rename that. I'll do that in a second. If our objects are correct, so drag 1 equals drop correct, drag 2 equals drop correct, just add the plus button for more, and drag 3. Make sure that all ands, not ors, so we want all of these to be correct, or we show the incorrect layer on there. So I'm just going to rename that submit button there, so it makes sense. So show correct layer when the user clicks the submit button if these 3 are all drop correct, or show the incorrect one. So let's just see that working. I'll just show you the keyboard focus as well while we're at it. So using keyboard focus, if you haven't used it, we just hit the tab key, and every time we hit the tab key, it will go on to the next one, and we just press Shift and Tab to go back. To select it, you either press the Enter or the spacebar. So it then goes selected. I then go, right, I want that to move onto that box, and then we have to go backwards again. And some people think this is a pain, but I think if you're using it all the time, you get very quick at it. And then we go onto a submit button and select that. and then we can see that that happened to be correct. I actually want to get rid of the submit button on the correct page as well, but I'll just replay it, and I'll just show you this by just dragging them. If I get a few wrong and we hit the submit button, it then goes to the incorrect page. At the moment I can still click on these, which we don't want, and that's where our disabled state would work. So the first thing I want to do is go to my correct layer and just untick submit button off both of those like that, and I want to disable the these so they don't pop up. So we're just going to click on new one. I'm going to put change state of drag 1 to disabled when the timeline starts on this layer, and I'm just going to duplicate that for drag 2 and duplicate it for drag 3. So then when we go on the correct page it'll be like that. Then we can select all of these, just hold down the shift key and click on all of them and copy, go to incorrect and select on that. So then we aren't able to select them. We didn't have to draw a rectangle around anything. It's nice and straightforward. Now you might want to have it that you have a back button so they can try again. If you do that, you would need to have it so that when you selected the back button, it is changing the state all back to normal, because that's what we want. But it can change. Trying to redo the animations can be a bit tricky, and a really easy, quick way around it is you can create it so that it jumps to slide, and you jump to this slide when the user clicks on a button, for example. And as long as you've got your slide set to reset, then that will put everything back in the same position before. So that's what I would recommend if you're having a back button, just to reset everything. If you're using variables, you would have to reset the variables all to be whatever they are, but in this course we don't. In this we don't have that. If you don't want a try again button, and I tend not to, the user just wants to get through it if they've got it wrong. It's just explaining to them where they went wrong. So I have an icon for each of these that says whether they got it right or wrong, and then just have a button to a final page that gives them the correct answer. So I'm going to insert an icon, and I want a tick icon to start with. So I'll use this one, and I'm just going to change the colour to be a green, and I'm going to just change the size of it to be 100 by 100, and then move it into the position I want. I usually have it overlapping a bit, but you can have it wherever you want. And then we're going to go to states, and we want to add a new state, but we don't want to choose one of these, we just want to call it incorrect. And click add. You could call it wrong, whatever you choose. And this time we're going to insert a different icon, a wrong icon. So use this one, and I'm going to change the colour again. So let's just have a red, and change the width and height to 100. Oops. Like that, and then position it over the top of our tick. And then to get rid of the tick, this is just the way I work. I rearrange this, send it to back, and then I click out, click back on and delete the tick. This just means it goes in exactly the same position. You could just use XY coordinates, but that's what I've done. So we have our normal state and our incorrect state, and we click done. Then we'll just go to the timeline and call that an answer 1. And then we're going to duplicate it for the other two. So copy and paste, and the final one about there. And don't forget to rename these. Make sure that when you do copy and paste, that you're then got them in the right order. So we've got 1, 2 and 3 like that. And then we are going to set our triggers for it. So click on create new trigger, and we want to change the state of answer 1 to normal. That's our correct state when timeline starts on this layer. If our drag 1 is set to drop correct, and if that isn't correct or it's anything else, we set the answer 1 to incorrect and click OK. And then we're just going to duplicate that and edit it and change it to answer 2 this time when timeline starts on this layer. If drag 2 is correct, and obviously this would be whichever drags you've created, because again I've done it in a very straight answer, but you want them swapping around. So don't forget to change the else state. A lot of people forget this object here and leave it as answer 1. And we're just going to duplicate that, and this time answer 3, timeline starts on this layer when drag 3 is correct, and change answer 3 to be incorrect. So let's give that a go. And this time when we do our dragging, so obviously need to make sure I get a wrong answer, hit the submit button. You can see this one is correct and these 2 are wrong, and you could replay it just to make sure that everything is, so if we get them all wrong, we can see that everything is working correctly. We need to make sure that our triggers here are before setting it to a disabled state. I have tried it both ways and it seems to be okay, but it's good practice to make sure you're putting the stuff you want to happen first at the top and then the stuff that you want to happen next at the bottom, and that will make sure that your triggers definitely work. So the final thing I want to do is on the accessible drag and drop main page, we need to change the state of our drag 1 and 2 to not have this red and green colour. They need to change to the orange colour. So it's great to have a different colour when you're testing, but don't forget to change it back. So we need to change that to the orange and then do the same to our drop incorrect. And then we can just use our format painter to copy over to this one and then to copy it over to that one. So this time when we view it, everything should be orange all the time. So we drag it on, or we click and we drag, and everything is orange, and we submit it. So we don't know whether we're getting it right or wrong. Obviously you can see I didn't get it right. So everything should be working now. I hope that was useful. I know that I've gone through a lot of detail with that, but I wanted to show you each of the steps that I do to get the whole page done. I think the only thing I would be adding is I would have a button that said reveal answers and give the correct answers on the final layer. But you can just use boxes for that. You don't need to have any triggers at all. It's just a slide that gives them the correct answers. And I probably would use my tick icons on the correct page as well. But I hope that was useful. I'll be trying to do more of these videos on useful things and making your content more accessible. Thank you.